Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Love Over Fear. I'm here with Heidi today and we're going to talk a little bit about, today's topic is going to have a couple different concepts, but through this lens of self-love, we're going to talk about labels, stigmas, and layers and how that all intertwines to create challenges to getting that access to love that we're looking for and what to do with that. It seems like every time we do this, I ask you where you want to start, but where do you want to start?
I want to start with layers. So we talked a little bit about last time the shared pool of meaning and presence. Yeah. So presence means what is happening right now in this moment. Who am I right now? And who is the person next to me right now? Yeah. And anytime we're not in the present moment, showing up for each other in the right now, we've created a layer.
We're gonna go there right there. I'm so excited. Yeah, okay, let's do it.
So take it, you got it.
Well, okay, if we map this to sport, if we map this specifically to athletic performance, right, actually, I don't even want to go there. I want to start with just relational energy, and we'll use it for us, I say relational energy because the thing that athletes, we have to grab onto, the energy between the people around us and ourselves is just as real and just as impactful on how we perform as the energy of how much weight I lift. It's the same thing, right? And when I have interactions with my teammates, my friends, my loved ones, my family, any of the above, it affects how I show up.
Right.
So layers of how am I showing up in this moment and who am I seeing show up in this moment is the theme of like what we're working through right now, right? Like where are we as partners? Where are we as people? And how do we see each other for where we are and also show up for each other in that moment in a way that's in recognition of that?
Right. So what I'm going to pull on right there, the thread that I'm going to pull on is this notion of presence. Because if we are in, you know that phrase, leave it all on the court, leave it all on the mat, like, dump your whole self out. We are accustomed to that mantra in sport, in athletic training, especially high level. Give it your all, give it 110%. Why don't we give ourselves that mantra in relationship? Why don't we give ourselves that mantra in life, in work, in
spiritual training,
in dishes, in spirituality? Like, it's all one spiritual journey, all of it. And when we are not 100% in the present, it's that layer that's in front of us. Maybe it's a fear layer, but it's that layer that's keeping us from giving 100%. It's that fear of, I'm afraid to show up as who I am right now because I think that you think that the me of before is who you're seeing.
Oh. Yeah.
So when we do that with our coaches, it could be the me that we think my coach wants to see, or the me that the coach saw play last time, right? And if we're not in the habit and the practice of being in relationships that expect us to show up right here, right now, with all of who we are at this moment, the good, the bad, the ugly, the scared, the love, and the fear. Yeah. This is, we talk about love over fear, but it's not love instead of fear.
Right.
We have to have both. And it's that fear that shows us the line. It's that fear that shows us that there is a layer. If we don't have the fear, we can't take off the layer.
And it should be separated that we're not, the point of this content, what we're talking about right here, the point of understanding how to use and lean into love is not instead of fear. It's to understand how to feel fear and still make a choice, take an action, say what is being present, whatever the case is, that is in alignment with your true self, with that authentic expression. So it's not, like you just said, it's not, I can't feel fear and I don't want to let that be. You have to feel it. You have to feel the sadness or the fear or the anger or the grief or the greed or the jealousy or the competition. You have to feel those, and we have to be able to see them as a signal maybe for us to see what layer is showing up right now or what barrier is being created.
So when we talk about taking off the layers, it's internal first. We can't control what the other person puts into that shared pool of what we're working with, right? Yeah. We can only take off our own layers, and that may require that I have to open up and get vulnerable first. Yeah. We can't say, oh, when he lets down his layer, I'm gonna let mine down, right? But we have to be the vulnerable one to say, I feel this fear and I'm going to press forward anyway. I'm going to take off this layer of expectation from my family, from my coach, from my team, and show up and say, all the hard questions. We've talked to so many athletes lately that have gone through hard things, and they had to show up to the coach and say, this is who I really am and this is what I really want. And if you want me on the team, you're going to take all of it or none of it. So this all or none, that evolves and changes in every moment. So the second piece here is the labels. We put ourselves in these little boxes, and when we get enough layers, it becomes a box. Yeah. They just stack up and create this thing called a label. Yeah. And maybe that's the label of, I'm a mom, so I can't do X, Y, and Z, or I'm a professional athlete, so I can't have a spiritual practice on the side, There are these things that mix up. How do you see those labels affecting not just performance, but human performance?
Well, it's separation, right? We use the term love, and maybe it'd be helpful to define it in this moment. Love isn't purely this one. For our language, the English language is woefully inadequate at describing what we are trying to communicate with a single word, right? Because there's different shades of love, and there's different levels of love, and there's different expressions of love. And even to that point, we use the term love very synonymously with wholeness, with 100%, with authenticity, with connection. So when we have these different labels that build walls around us, it separates us from the world around us. It separates us from ourselves. It creates a place where there is just separation. And when there's separation, it affects how we are physically wired. It affects how we think. When there's separation, because we think somebody expects a certain thing of us, or that we're supposed to think a certain thing, suddenly our bodies are going to get slower. That energy, you said it in our last episode, our energy, it goes somewhere. If we're not healthy physically, it's usually because there's energy being sent to our body that is just trapped. It's not being released. It's because it's been separated. It's because it's been cut off from what we want to have and experience. And as athletes, what we take for granted so often is that we think we can compartmentalize. Separation is another word for compartmentalization. We think if it's happening over here, I can keep it contained over here. And oh my gosh, I'm guilty of this, as every athlete is. And the only thing that happens when we do that is it creates pain and suffering in our performance, in our relationships, in our life when we separate. And it takes so much courage to not separate, because you are exposing yourself. You're saying, wow, I'm going to not air my dirty laundry, but I'm going to show up right here and say everything that I'm thinking, or bring every feeling to the surface and allow it to just be.
So layers.
Yeah.
Stigma.
Yeah.
Coulda, shoulda, wouldas.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that's been a challenge and a real deep spiritual growth for me is, what does this label of athlete mean?
Yeah.
Josh just felt this this pain and struggle for me over this past year, because I've been involved in this community for so long, and I have trained in the martial arts for 15 plus years, and I'm not training right now due to multiple injuries and some other external factors. And it's been a conflict. It's caused this internal soul level angst. Am I an athlete? Does that label still fit? Even these labels that we talk about, am I a coach? Am I a player? What if I'm transitioning from being a player to a coach? Suddenly I have this new label. There's this new box that I've jumped into, but I may not have all the layers that have made it up yet. Or I'm jumping out of a box. I'm no longer a professional athlete, and now I'm transitioning into the workforce. I'm taking off all these layers, and what's left underneath? Who am I once I take off this label? And my heart just goes out to all of the people in our community. And this is one of those things, as you learn to open into this space, you just may feel like this flooding sensation of that opening as you connect wholly. Every time we have an event, that's what it feels like. It feels like a homecoming, because here are all these athletes and people that have trained, people in the spiritual practices, Reiki masters, tapping, all of these energetic professionals just coming together saying, we are here to heal And we are here to create wholeness. So that's what you talked about, this lack of separation. It doesn't matter what your label is. It doesn't matter what your sport is. The point is that we are spiritual beings driving around these physical bodies, and some of us really like to use them in kinetic ways, which is called sport. And that sport is just another way to express what our spirit is here to figure out. And some of us just do it in really violent ways that involve really nice hits and good punches. But that violence is just self-love again. You know, it's moving strongly kinetically. It's not violent energy. It's beautiful, loving energy that happens to move in a very dynamic way. And that is the separation, not separate. You know, to become whole means we have to bring the pieces back together, which means we can't have part of us in this box, in this label, and part of us over here in this box. It's taking off those boxes to say, this is wholeness.
And maybe one of the challenges there too, what I know is the scariest part for me a lot of times when I think of training, when I think of life, is to say, where did that separation start? And to really dive into, oh my gosh, like if that's where it started, so I think a lot of people are familiar with the idea of the unconscious, that Sigmund Freud talked about, and Carl Jung, like all these like really deep thinkers around the psycho-spiritual and just the psychological work that we do as human beings. And you go back to the source a lot of times, right? You go back to that little 7-year-old boy or girl who went through something really intense and who's replayed that pattern over and over, trying to figure out how to deal with it and process it. What I don't think we do sometimes as athletes, especially if we've separated ourselves in different parts of life, and I use the term, I want to come back to athletes, I want to define that. We use the separation, we don't go back and say, where did it start? And even if it doesn't mean a different decision forward, it means we have to go back and look at it and say, wow, I started feeling this way about my training at this point. What was happening here? Like, why did that happen? We can't compartmentalize anymore, right? We have to go back.
So that's still self-love though. That's still drawing that boundary, because presence now means I love who I am right now and I show up whole right now. But part of that presence is looping back and going back and loving all the pieces of the past and looping forward to the future and loving yourself from the future. So, you know, I really love the analogy of the past and the present coming together in the center, which is a whole nother little session. This is the piece where everything belongs. The fear belongs, the love belongs. It's what we do with it and how we bring it together in relationship that makes it a different practice. That makes it a different movement from maybe our peers. And that's why community is so important, to find others practicing the same level of self-awareness and self-love. And now it brings us to the third thing, which is the stigma. So as we begin to uncover layers and talk about what it means to transition through roles and still be whole, there is pushback and there's stigma because those labels cause reactions. How have you felt those reactions, and how do you watch that stigma take place?
So I'll answer the second one because I think it'll answer the first. The watching it take place, internally when I watch it take place, it shows up in the ways that are the pain we've talked about. Like those stigmas so often show up as the feeling of something being off, that out of alignmentness, that feeling of, incongruence, that
Where do you feel in your body?
Oh, in my heart and in my gut. In my heart, in my gut, I feel tense. My breath shortens and quickens. And when I feel, so maybe an even more specific way to communicate it, right, is that when I feel that stigma surface, or my perception of the stigma surface, or what I perceive somebody else's perception of that to be.
It's a layer on a layer.
A layer on a layer on a layer. When I see those and feel those, my breath shortens, and this is silence again. Those are those moments where I pull in, and suddenly now it's not about getting present with the moment and sharing where I am. It's about self-protection. It's about defense. It's about safety, and
Walls.
Barrier, 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 barrier. And I've felt that. Go ahead.
Okay, good.
I've felt that in every aspect of life, right? And there's training. It's an incredible place to be because the martial arts gave me so many things, right? It gave me the things that I'm most grateful for in life. And it also taught me the most about what I have not done well yet, right? Like the parts of my life performance, the parts of my athletic performance that are not whole and haven't been. And that's an odd place for an athlete to be because we associate so much, there's such confusing emotions around sport for us. Like it's not, when we talk about love and self-love, it's to really bring it all together and to understand it all. Because for so many of us, we don't talk about the fact that, yeah, I might love this thing, but I hate training. Or,
which is another way to have that sport be the mirror for us.
Yeah.
Have that situation, it's always a mirror, something to hold up so we can see that wall.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't see them from the inside looking out.
No.
Sometimes it's only having an external experience to look back at us as a mirror so that we can see that wall and take it down. So for athletes, I want to wrap this back around. Transitioning, feeling stigma, going through the pain of either putting on new labels, taking off labels, understanding the layers that you need to remove or need to be part of processing in order to show up whole, you don't have to do that alone. That's why we have a community, and this is a place to learn to navigate those layers. How do they get there?
so connect with us, guys. Go to the Academy. If you have not applied to enroll in the Academy, theomniathlete.com/the-community. Go check it out. The community there, no pun intended, we keep using that word, but it is a community and it's incredible. Both the depth of people, coaches, athletes that are there and the conversations that are taking place.
And courses that are upcoming too.
And courses that are upcoming. Like, it's all about doing this work. And number two, if you have questions you want us to answer or talk about on the show, email us, josh@theomniathlete.com. Just send us a question. Hey, what do you think about this? Or comment any social outlets that we have, social media. We want this platform to be about answering the questions that as athletes we haven't had a space to talk about. As coaches, we haven't known what to do with. And we need your help to do that.